Hello, my name is Hannah and welcome back to the Let's Speak English YouTube channel. Today we're going to look at a super important topic, conditionals. If I were rich, I'd buy a house. If I had been there, I would have done something. If it rains tomorrow, I'll stay inside. Do you know how to form sentences like these? If not, don't worry. Today we're going to practice. So what is a conditional? A conditional refers to a hypothetical situation and its possible consequence. The type of conditional we use depends on if we're talking about the future or the past and how likely we think something is. And we form a conditional with a conditional clause, which usually contains the word if, and the main clause, which usually contains some kind of modal. So there are a few different types of conditionals in English. Let's start with the first conditional, sometimes known as the future conditional. Utilizamos el first conditional para hablar del resultado de una situación futura imaginada, cuando creemos que la situación es bastante probable. Here's an example of the first conditional. If you practice every day, your English will improve. Si practicas todos los días, mejorarás tu inglés. We form the future conditional by using if plus present tense in the conditional clause, if you practice, present tense, with the future with will in the main clause. You will improve, future with will. And remember, this is really important. We use the modal verb in the main clause, not in the conditional clause. So, that's the theory of the first conditional. Are you ready to try using it? I'll tell you some sentences in Spanish, and I want you to tell me the correct translation in English with the first conditional. No aprenderás si no estudias. Tell me in English. You won't learn if you don't study. You won't learn, future with will in the negative, if you don't study, present simple in the negative. And notice it doesn't matter which order you put the main clause in the conditional clause. You could also say, if you don't study, you won't learn. You won't learn if you don't study. Doesn't matter. Let's do another one. Lo haré si me ayudas. Tell me in English. I will do it if you help me. Don't forget that it, lo haré, I will do it. Or with the contraction, I'll do it if you help me. Tell me again with the contraction. I'll do it if you help me. Another one. ¿A dónde irás si no te quedas aquí? Tell me in English. Where will you go if you don't stay here? That one was a question, so don't forget you have to use the correct word order. Where will you go if you don't stay here? Try this one. Vendrán si les llamas. Tell me in English. They will come if you call them. Or with the contraction, they'll come if you call them. Tell me again with the contraction. They'll come if you call them. And finally, one last translation for the first conditional. Lo compraré cuando tenga dinero. Tell me in English. I'll buy it when I have money. In this case, we don't use if but when, which can also be used in a conditional clause in the first conditional. I'll buy it when I have money. Tell me again. I'll buy it, or I will buy it, when I have money. Future with will, present simple. So that's the first conditional. It's pretty straightforward, right? Let's move on to the second conditional. If I had more money, I would buy a house. O sea, si tuviese más dinero, compraría una casa. Utilizamos el second conditional para hablar del posible resultado de una situación imaginada en el presente o en el futuro. Decimos cuáles deben ser las condiciones para que la situación presente o futura sea diferente. We form the second conditional with if plus the verb in the past simple in the conditional clause and would plus the base verb in the main clause. Again, we can also use some other modal verbs in the second conditional, such as could, or should, or might. Y cuidado con el verbo to be in the second conditional. The verb to be in the past is either was or were, but in the second conditional, we always use the form were, no matter the person. Es posible que los nativos lo utilicen de forma incorrecta en el lenguaje oral cotidiano, pero la forma correcta es utilizar were in the second conditional. So remember, with the second conditional, it's if plus past simple plus would or another modal verb, and then the base verb. So you don't put to in front of the verb after would. Let's see how you do. As always, I'll tell you the sentences in Spanish and you tell me in English. First one, lo haría si pudiera. Tell me in English. I would do it if I could. O con la contracción, I'd do it if I could. Tell me with the contraction. I'd do it if I could. Another one. Te ayudaría si tuviera suficiente dinero. Tell me in English. I would help you if I had enough money. Or with the contraction, I'd help you if I had enough money. Remember, we use the past simple in the conditional clause. If I had. Another one. Yo que tú no lo haría. Tell me in English. If I were you, I wouldn't do it. Remember, it's not if I was you. The correct way is if I were you. Tell me again. If I were you, I wouldn't do it. If I were you, I wouldn't do it. Si hubiera más gente aquí, terminaríamos antes. Tell me in English. If there were more people here, we would finish sooner. ¿Qué tal lo has hecho? Remember, the verb haber normally translates as there plus be in English. So not only do you have to remember to put the there in this sentence, you also have to remember that we have the verb to be, which becomes were in the second conditional. Si hubiera más gente aquí, terminaríamos antes. If there were more people here, we would, or with the contraction, we'd finish sooner. Tell me the sentence again. If there were more people here, we'd finish sooner. And the last translation for the second conditional, ganaría más dinero si supiera inglés. Tell me in English. I would earn more money if I knew English. ¿Qué tal vas hasta ahora con los conditionals? The conditional is something you need to use in everyday English, and it is so important to master it, just like many other aspects of English. Si tú no dominas el inglés, pierdes oportunidades en la vida. Pero no te preocupes, yo te quiero echar una mano. Tenemos una oferta de Black Friday válida hasta el 4 de diciembre, gracias a la cual podrás inscribirte en nuestra academia online y participar todos los días en nuestras clases divertidas y amenas con profesores nativos. Te va a encantar nuestro método y vas a aprender un montón con nosotros. ¿A qué esperas? Si quieres más información, hay un enlace en la descripción. So, we've had a look at the first conditional and the second conditional. Finally, let's move on to the third conditional. This is maybe what some English learners consider to be the most difficult. If I had known that, I wouldn't have done it. Si lo hubiera sabido, no lo habría hecho. Utilizamos el third conditional cuando imaginamos un pasado diferente, en el que algo ocurrió o no ocurrió, e imaginamos un resultado diferente. We form the third conditional with the following structure. If plus had plus participle, o sea, if plus the past perfect in the conditional clause, plus would plus have plus participle. Again, for the main clause here, you can substitute would for should or could. So as you can see, the third conditional is a little bit trickier than the other ones because there are more parts to it. But don't worry, now we're going to practice. You already know how we do this by now. I'll tell you in Spanish and you tell me in English. First one. Si me hubiera tocado la lotería, me habría jubilado. Tell me in English. If I had won the lottery, I would have retired. So we have the past perfect in the first part. If I had won, that had with the participle won. And then in the second part, would have retired in the participle there. Tell me the sentence again. If I had won the lottery, I would have retired. In spoken English, it's really common to contract would have to make would've. You tell me, would've. Would've. It's a lot easier than saying would have. Let's do another one. Si él hubiera jugado, el equipo habría ganado. Tell me in English. If he had played, the team would have won. Or with the contraction, if he had played, the team would have won. ¿Qué tal vas hasta ahora? Let's do another one. Si no lo hubieran vendido, yo lo habría comprado. Tell me in English. If they hadn't sold it, I would have bought it. So we can also use this negative way. If they hadn't sold it, I would have or would have bought it. Tell me that one again. If they hadn't sold it, I would have bought it. Si le hubieras visto, te habrías dado cuenta. Tell me in English. If you had seen him, you would have realized. ¿Qué tal lo has hecho? Darse cuenta en inglés, to realize. If you had seen him, you would have or you would have realized. We'll do one more translation for the third conditional. This one's a tricky one, but think about what I told you earlier in the lesson and it might help you. Si hubiera habido fiesta, ellos no habrían ido. Tell me in English. If there had been a party, they wouldn't have gone. ¿Qué tal lo has hecho? Si hubiera habido. Remember, we've got the verb haber in there. Like I told you earlier in the lesson, that usually translates to there plus be. So we still need to use there plus be in the past perfect. There had been. If there had been a party, ellos no habrían ido. They wouldn't have gone. Tell me the sentence again. If there had been a party, they wouldn't have gone. Espero que esta clase te haya sido útil. Recuerda que hay un enlace en la descripción si quieres más información sobre clases con nosotros. Yo soy una profesora en el gym y me encanta. I would absolutely love to help you achieve your English goals. Y ahora es el mejor momento para inscribirte con nuestra super oferta de Black Friday. No pierdas esta oferta. Espero que tengas un buen día y que sigas practicando tu inglés. Nos vemos en clase.